Well, hi everyone. Nothing like being the first speaker after lunch to kind of motivate you all. Probably all a bit tired. I guess I'll start off with talking about what a year it's been. I mean, this has been, as you all know, an absolutely crazy year from natural disasters, and whether it's earthquakes, tsunamis, ash clouds, flooding, cyclones, we've had it all this year. It's been a crazy year, and you have dealt with all of it. I mean, you're the ones that are at the face of dealing with these sort of emergencies as they pop up. In the same way, I guess I'm also responsible for these emergencies, but from a news point of view, I don't make them. And certainly we've had a busy year this year as well. Our ratings, as you just mentioned, have been huge. So it's quite humbling, but it's a lot of pressure as well. So I guess I'll start off with talking about how Weather Watch started. So we started in 2005. Most of you would know Met Service as being the main sort of weather provider in the country, owned by the government, operated as a state-owned enterprise based in Wellington. There are other private forecasters around the country as well. There's Blue Skies in Christchurch, and there is another company, Met Ocean, in Taranaki, and they provide services as well for smaller clients. But there's never really been anyone that's focused on the news. So we jumped on this. Now the reason why I've got this picture up here, it's the rain radar from Hurricane Katrina. Now this was before anyone knew what Hurricane Katrina was. Unless you lived in America, you wouldn't have probably even heard about it on the news. And this was in August 2005, the 29th of August. Now this storm had passed over Miami. It was a Category 1. It didn't make the news even in New Zealand. And then it moved into the Gulf of Mexico and headed towards New Orleans. Now, what's the relevance of this to New Zealand? Well, for the first time ever, I was working at the radio network. I was working in the copywriting department where they write all the radio ads. There's a journalist at the Herald who loves to refer to me as a former ad man every time she ever writes about me, and that's why. But I was actually managing in the end, and I had a laptop on my desk, and it was back in, as I say, 2005. We didn't all have them. And we had this running, and it was animated, and the loop was going around. And even though I was supposed to be managing Wet and Forget and Harvey Norman and all those sort of things, I was more interested in this, so I started watching it. And I had a group of people standing around me watching this radar loop, because they'd never seen it. In New Zealand, we don't have updates every few minutes. We have them once an hour. So you don't get a feeling when a storm comes in of what it feels like and what it looks like. This was powerful. I knew it was going to be big. Certainly didn't expect the number of deaths we had. But it was amazing that this storm in 2005 made me think, why don't we have a service like this in New Zealand that talks about the weather, talks about any sort of natural disaster as it comes on in. And so I went to the bosses at TRN. They didn't really, at the radio network, they weren't too sure about it. The general manager thought he could see a way of making money out of it, so that was his motivation. Mine was just to run it. I didn't really care about the money. So we got onto it and we set this up. And the next thing we did was we created the Weather Watch Centre. And that was our very first logo, made in paint, I think, and it did its job. And the updates were running on News Talk ZB, and News Talk ZB has Weather Watch 24/7. That's their branding. So we sort of slipped it in and thought, well, we'll call it the Weather Watch Centre. It sounds big and grand. It's like CNN's news centre, and maybe we can grow this into something. So we started that off, and really it took off quite quickly from a news point of view. And News Talk ZB started running these stories. We were really just commentating on weather events that were happening. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not a scientist. I'm just like a lot of you guys, and I just love the weather a lot. So we thought, well, there's a way of mixing the media and weather and any sort of natural disaster, because there is no formal or official place in this country to get all your weather news from. And that happens with anything, whether it's an earthquake or whatever. You have to rely on the mainstream media to pick up on those stories, which they mostly do quite a good job at. But there were some areas that we thought we could improve in, and one of them was to stop having headline stories about rain warnings in Fiordland. They're not really, no one really cares. Even when there is one, it doesn't really interest most of New Zealand. And then we'd get a thunderstorm warning for somewhere like Hamilton, and it wouldn't even be in the news. So we were sort of going, there's a bit of a funny balance going on here, and it's mostly because journalists just have no idea. A lot of them don't understand the weather. They don't understand all the sciences of it, so we've had to work with them. So we started this off. The problem with the name is it didn't mean anything, and because it was a small little division within the radio network, it had no funding, no promotion. We could only rely on the news media to sort of cover it and quote us. So we changed it. We thought, well, we'll brand it the website, and that way every time the Herald runs it, they'll put a clickable link in there and we'll get people to our website. So we did it that way, and it's grown phenomenally since then. Then the recession started back in, when was that now, 2008, 9, and the radio network, I don't know how they managed it, but they managed to keep me on board for a whole year, which is amazing considering all sorts of people were being made redundant. But it was my turn last year. And so after a bit of negotiation, I walked away with the website, still have a contract with the radio network, a great company that I'm proud to be associated with, especially with News Talk ZB. And the brand grew very quickly once I was sort of, I guess, free of the corporate shackles with all the red tape, and even getting $500 was always tricky. Now I can just sort of spend my own money and get it done. So the website's taken off, and also with huge support from the New Zealand Herald, which has been a major part of it. So the Herald are one of our biggest clients, but we also have obviously Auckland Civil Defence, one of our clients. We have Fonterra. I'll touch on all those in a moment, but basically they've all sort of given us the support that we really sort of needed in our first year of being alone. So Weather Watch is really me, based in Auckland, and then Richard Green, he's my weather analyst based down in the South Island. We've got a really perfect balance. We're both complete nerds. We love the weather. We love radio. We love talking, and all those things kind of work together in producing a product that the public sort of seem to be quite interested in. So the site has, as I say, done well this year with these big natural events. And what we found really interesting this year was that people were coming to us for more than just the weather. So we kicked off in January with all those floods in Australia, and we were surprised how many people were interested in us. Only about 3% of our readers come from Australia, 6% come from America, which was another amazing statistic I got this week. But they were really interested in those Brisbane floods. Our site crashed about 4 times with people wanting to watch the river flood. I don't know why people wanted to watch that on live streaming, but they did. And we had a pretty big response when the cyclone season kicked off, and certainly there were no shortage of tropical cyclones this year, one of the busiest ever for the South Pacific. I think from memory we had 6 X storms down this way. Most of them didn't do much, but Tropical Cyclone Wilma certainly did, $25 million worth of damage, and that was an area where Weather Watch really sort of came to life. We struggle sometimes to find enough news content in one day. You know, on a quiet day, November's a terrible month, so it's usually quite boring. You have one day and you're trying to write 4 or 5 news stories about the weather, that's a bit of a struggle. When you have Cyclone Wilma coming in, there's no shortage of stuff. And we basically started doing these running timelines, live updates, every 3 or 4 minutes. We were just doing updates, getting a lot of feedback from the public, people all over the place coming to us via Twitter and Facebook and letting us know whether it was flooding at their house. They were sending us photos. We're getting all the sort of breaking stories that we then feed on to the media, to the mainstream media, the Heralds and the TV3s and the News Talk ZBs of the world. And so that service they've found great, because like all the other businesses in the country and around the world, they've all sort of downsized over the last couple of years. So having somebody to help them out at no cost to them was something that they were quite keen on doing. So we jumped onto that. So we have grown this year. These are just a handful of people that we deal with on a regular basis. Fonterra come to us because they want to know about when it's going to rain, in the next month. Do they have to get ready for it? So this month, for example, we were saying we think the West Coast is going to be in for a lot of rain. We think everybody else may not be quite so lucky, depending on how you look at it. And in the northern part of the country, we knew that there was going to be a dry month ahead, and it's certainly been very dry. Farmers are already starting to comment on just how dry it's getting, and I don't see any sign in our weather pattern at the moment of any change. I think the next 3 or 4 weeks are going to remain windy and fairly stormy. So with some calm days as well. It's not all doom and gloom, but that's on the way. So Fonterra pick us up on that. The Herald, some of you would know that I do some weather videos for them. We do 3 of them 3 times a week. We're looking at growing that next year because it's been hugely successful, and it breaks away from the TV weather that is very, regimented. It's set in its way, and with the internet, you just have the ability to talk about whatever you want. So if there's a ash cloud over New Zealand, let's talk about that for 3 minutes, and perhaps not so much about how you're going to have to wash your laundry tomorrow, how's it going to dry. So the Herald have been great, and we've got a good relationship with them. CNN, they're not a client of ours, but we have a very good working relationship with them, which we got through News Talk ZB. And that put me into quite an interesting position this year. Some of you may know that I was in the September quake in Christchurch last year, 7 floors up in Cathedral Square when that hit at 4:35. And it not only changed my life a wee bit, because it was certainly a fairly emotional experience to go through, but the work side of me kicked in. I was one of the only reporters inside that area at such a crucial time. And I just couldn't believe, luckily the phones were going, and I was getting just interview after interview from all of the big, international, the BBCs and all that. I can't remember half of them. I was still in shock about what had actually happened. You just sort of switch into work mode in a situation like that. But when February 22nd happened, that was a fairly high pressure moment for me. I had to do an interview on CNN, and it went out to about 50 million people. I was one of the first reporters that they'd spoken to, and they'd only spoken to me because of my history with the September one. And I suddenly sort of realised as I was about to take this call that I'm not just talking about what's happened, but I'm representing the whole country to the entire world. I didn't want to paint a picture of a building industry that doesn't know how to build buildings, because that certainly wasn't the case. I didn't want to dramatise it, but I also wanted to make it interesting for the viewers to watch and cover it accurately as well. So there was I felt a lot of pressure doing that, and I don't think I stuffed it up, but it was certainly a moment for me that was a fair amount of pressure on me to make sure that I represent New Zealand. It's not just about having the best news story and being sensational. Some of our criticism at the very beginning by our competitors was that we were sensationalising stuff. We weren't. We were just bringing it to attention. And like I say, we downscale some things. Fiordland rain warnings don't make it into the headline stories nowadays. But if you have a severe thunderstorm warning about to hit Rotorua, we'll definitely target that and make sure all of the mainstream media know about it. We go crazy on Twitter and Facebook. In fact, oddly enough, we do more updates about the Met Service warnings than Met Service do. So we're really jumping onto that social media side of things to really try and get the public right in behind it and understand what happens with these weather events when they come in. I'll speed up a bit. The Weather Channels are another one that we deal with in America. They're interesting. In fact, funny enough, I did a Skype interview with them during the August snowstorm. And they wanted to do it at about 2 or 3 in the morning New Zealand time, so it was a long day for me just covering the New Zealand side of it. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting there in my office at home with my shirt on and my hair all done, and underneath the camera just wearing my boxer shorts and socks. And I was not nervous at all, talking to 12 million people. Standing in front of you guys, I'm more nervous talking to, 70 people here than I was talking to 20 million in my undies. But that's a side story you could probably do without. I don't know what it is about me and underwear. And after the September earthquake, I got interviewed by someone on BBC in London, and they asked me what was I doing at the time of the earthquake, and I said, well, I was in my hotel room asleep. And they said, so what happened? Did you rush out of the room? And I was like, no, I couldn't. I was wearing nothing. I would rather die in my room than run out into the corridor with nothing on. So, and my phone got about 20 texts as soon as that interview was done from people who were watching it on TV, so it was a bit embarrassing. Of course, Auckland Council, I think we've got a good relationship with Clive and the guys there. I'm really enjoying providing the guys in Auckland with warnings. And, for any of you, if you're keen on it, please do drop me an email. You can get to us on the Weather Watch website using the Contact Us button. Go straight through to me or get in touch with Clive. We've enjoyed doing that because it's given us a chance to, again, use our public responsibility, I guess, to try and educate people, well in advance of things. We like to give you an early warning. We're already talking now about, we were talking a week ago about the wind that was coming this week. Some of you may not be aware, but there's a hell of a lot more coming Thursday and Friday this week. I think it'll be a national event, and it could cause some complications for some areas. Probably more South Island than North Island, but certainly the North Island's going to get roughed around a bit, and Auckland as well. So that's something to look forward to, I suppose. And Country 99 Television is my main bread and butter. It's a channel on Sky, which probably a lot of you haven't heard of, on Channel 99, and they just target farmers and anyone in agribusiness. And we do there a 10-day weather forecast every night, basically telling farmers what's on the way. And we look right out towards Perth and the Indian Ocean to see what's coming in towards us over the next week. And so they've found it an incredibly powerful weather service for them. So we take a lot from Country 99 Television and put that on our website as well, as far as the long-range stuff goes. The Herald on Sunday I write a column for. I don't know if I should be talking about that today, but anyway. And Prime News are someone that we also work quite closely with, and they've certainly been a lot of pleasure to work for. We just do interviews with them and that sort of stuff. And finally, the Radio Network, who Weather Watch or where Weather Watch actually started. So that's sort of just a background on who we deal with on a daily basis, and or monthly basis with people like CNN and the Weather Channel. We're sort of their representative now for Australasia. So they come to us even with storms in Australia and Fiji. So it's really cool for us because we get to. I love doing interviews, so it's always a bit of fun, but it's just nice talking to a different audience rather than just New Zealanders. It's nice to promote New Zealand, even if it is because of a snowstorm. You can still get in some pretty good plugs about this country that we live in. So those are the things. So here's some of the examples of what we do with CNN. So they come to us. And this was the ash cloud that came down over Invercargill. This was before it was a news story. And we sent it through to them saying, look, this is a sunset in Invercargill. It looks absolutely incredible. And so we sent it through to them. They had it up on CNN International within about an hour. And so the whole world was looking at it. They had 2 or 3 of those pictures up. From a social media point of view, it's fantastic because our followers on Facebook can send in photos and then an hour later have it going around the world. Now, they don't get paid for it, but most of them don't actually want money for it. They just love sharing this sort of stuff. And I will touch on social media before I finish because I think that's an area that will help all of you. And I know that you're already starting to use it with Twitter, and that's been great. But Facebook is great from also getting information to you. So that's what I'll touch on that shortly. But so they take our photos and they flick them around the world. Here's just a montage of me, which is a bit cringe, but these are just sort of the examples of what we do. So the top left-hand corner was the Albany tornado, and I think that was sort of what perhaps won me a little bit of respect, or won Weather Watch a bit of respect from quite a few people with the picking of that tornado as it came in. We didn't pick the tornado specifically, but we did pick the storms coming into Albany, and we were warning people about 3 hours before that about it coming on in, and we were concerned about Albany. And that's one of the reasons we want the Rain Radar network in New Zealand to be freed up a little bit more for the public, is that they can see these things coming in, they can take a bit of personal responsibility at getting an understanding of how the weather works. And like I go back to that Hurricane Katrina thing coming in, I mean, everybody at that desk who was watching it come in, they knew that this was going to be a big storm, and they could see it because it was rotating around, it was animated in that footage. So the reason why we want it in New Zealand is for that same reason. People can get used to seeing it on their phones, on their internet, on TV, and go, gosh, there's a big thunderstorm moving in, I might just stay at home and wait till that's passed. You don't have to use it for anything more scientific than just looking at the coloured blobs and going, I don't want to be anywhere near a red or a purple blob because that's usually a big thunderstorm or something nasty. So those are just a couple of examples of what we do. And one more, last one with the CNN one there, which was from the Queenstown snowstorm. I think it was in either July or August. They had 2 of them. So that was taken from that, and quite a spectacular photo. So good relationship with them, and we try and share things together. They give us content to use. Now, don't expect you to read all that. This is just an example of what we do when it comes to something that's not weather-related. And this is an area, the reason why I flew down to Wellington, caught up with John and Vince the other day about how we can work as a responsible, well, I guess we're a broadcaster because of our dealings with all the different media outlets. We want to make sure that we cover things properly, and that we are, if people are coming to us because there's been an earthquake somewhere or a tsunami warning, we want to cover it and do a good job of it. Private weather companies all around the world do this. It's not just Weather Watch. So this is a timeline, and it might be a bit hard for you to see, but this was during the Japanese tsunami. So this was a Friday night after a very long few weeks with the earthquakes, with the tropical cyclones, with the flooding in Brisbane, with Cyclone Yasi. We were already exhausted, and we were talking about it. This is, early March, and we feel like this is December. It's been just a long 2 months. Then Friday night, opening the bowl of red wine, going, finally, the week's over. Some of you nodding your heads. And all of a sudden, what's this? I get a text message from somebody saying there's been a huge earthquake in Japan. So I'm thinking, all right, well, that's not us, not too relevant. And then I saw the CNN update about 2 minutes later and went, oh, this is a little bit more relevant than I think about it. So we just did what all the media did. We jumped on it. We did an update at 8 o'clock and another one maybe at 8:15. And then as the footage started to come through of that tsunami rolling through live on TV, that was a surreal thing, wasn't it, to see? And we just thought, wow, this is going to affect the whole Pacific Basin, and we have a policy of covering anything that happens in the Pacific Basin, especially if it does have an effect on New Zealand, even if it's a small one. So we started doing this live timeline, and it was a bit unfortunate timing that my backup guy had just left to go to Singapore for a 2-week holiday, so I was stuck doing all the updates pretty much on my own, using some reporters around the country at News Talk ZB, and we managed to pull it together. We were the only media outlet in the country to provide a service that went pretty much all night. We had I think I had about a 2-hour sleep in the middle of the night when nothing was really happening, so we took a quick nap and went back into it. We did 190 updates between 8 p.m. Friday and 6 p.m. Saturday. And the public loved them. And one of the things that we tried to do was educate the media, not just the public, on the various different warnings that come out, whether this is the Pacific Tsunami Warning Centre or the Civil Defence official ones for here in New Zealand. I wrote a blog as well in the Herald after that event, this was back in August after the Kermadec Islands one, and I sort of had a go at the media a bit because I was saying, you're sending out these mixed messages. You have to learn when to use the Pacific Tsunami Warning Centre, when to use Civil Defence, and I think we're making some good inroads into that. Certainly at the Herald and News Talk ZB, they're a lot more aware of it, and we're trying to educate the public as well that these Pacific Tsunami Warning Centres, they do have a place, but they sort of need to be put into context with the warnings that you issue as well. So the timeline ran through that. We pushed out all the civil defence stuff in bold. We made sure it was clear to people what it meant. And then we also went back to the Pacific Tsunami Warning Centre and explained what their warnings meant and why they were cancelling some when we weren't here in New Zealand. So I think we're making some good inroads. And these live updates have been fantastically successful for us. We did them for that for the tsunami on March 9th. We did them again for the snowstorm in August, and just had huge following from it. People love to be able to log on and see that you've done an update in the last 5 minutes. So that's an area that we think we did quite well in. So the other thing is the position that we're in is unique. We deal with all of the media, whether it's TV, radio, print, online. And Weather Watch has built up some pretty good systems in place to ensure that we can get things to the newsrooms quickly. We try not to bog them down with too much stuff. We send them about one update a day, just covering the basics of the weather. But we also send through several updates if there's something happening, if there's something developing, and something big. So that's been working well for us. And one of the great things is the photos that the public send in to us. We get photos from all over the place. We've never paid for one photo in our lives. We've never hired a photographer to do anything. We simply ask the public to send them in, and they love sending them in because they get to have their name in the paper or on the website, and their photo up there for a while. So it's been quite successful, and I know that certain organisations, NIWA for example, and I think there are a couple of civil defence organisations in the South Island, I'm not sure about the North Island, who also use our news service to sort of help document what's happening each month as we go through the year, so that they've got a sort of a review of what's happened over the year. So that's good for us. It knows that that what we're putting out there is trustworthy. That's a big thing for me. Being a small organisation, we can't afford to make mistakes. We can't afford to be sensational, because if we do, we burn people very quickly, and we don't have the resources to sort of come back if we lose that interest and lose that support. So credibility is a major thing for us. So social media, let me just touch on this. Social media has been a fantastic element to us. Now, I know I'm slightly different because I'm running a commercial organisation that tries to make money, and you're running a public safety service, which is quite sort of different. But the social media side is hugely important for that. And the reason why is because we have a certain amount of people from Auckland, which is great, but we get people from all over the country. So we're not just getting Auckland feedback. The thing that really intrigued me, as I said before, is sometimes not just about using Twitter and Facebook to get your message out. Sometimes it's to get their messages to you. You don't necessarily have to reply to them, but it's really good seeing, having interaction with them. And the reason why is when we had the snowstorm earlier this month, that weird one in November that happened down in the deep south, we put a comment in there saying the worst place to live will be the Catlins this weekend. I didn't think anybody would care. We had 3 people who were readers who are based down there, and they wrote within 10 minutes saying, "Oh, don't slag off this area, it's a great place to live," and all right, whatever, it's a windy place if you ask me, but all right, it's a very pretty area as well. And they were very quick to jump on that. So it was great for me to see that, because We get people writing to us when we had the snowstorms back in August. We were having people telling us it was snowing way before we heard it from any official sources, from any media. And the people on Facebook, you start to get a feeling with them. You start to get an idea of who's trustworthy, who's not. And to be honest, most of them are. Most of them actually do write genuine things. I guess the weather is a sort of a thing that people don't really get a lot of kicks making stuff up about. So we've used the Twitter side of things is great. Twitter's great for being fast, and people love it because it doesn't clutter up your phone. It doesn't have lots of all this rubbish that Facebook comes with. It's nice and easy and simple to use. And I love the civil defence Twitter updates. They've been great and really, really helpful. Facebook is great as well. It's a little bit different because you have a lot more interaction. I still think there's a place for civil defence to use that as well and use it for your gain. Certainly when you've got an event happening, feel free to use our Facebook page. I mean, you can see if there are floods happening in Gisborne, you can jump on there and see what the locals are saying about it, and you might be getting sort of different feedback to what you've perhaps been hearing through your local channels. So we've had some great stuff, and a lot of our breaking news stories now come out of Facebook and Twitter. So we have to double check and verify it, obviously, before we run it. But we found that to be hugely helpful at getting the message across. So I think that's an area, where I think we see a lot more growth. It was a lady at Māori Television who actually got me onto it. She told me it'll lift your ratings by 10%, and it did. We got 10% jump as soon as we got both of those pages up and running, and they involve very little work. Facebook does a little bit because we try to be interactive, simply because we love being interactive with our readers. We love answering their questions. As much as I get sick of being asked what's the weather going to be like this Saturday, I still respond to every single email that we get into our company. I don't expect you guys to do that for civil defence, but it is useful to build up those sort of those pictures. So I guess before I finish, I just wanted to touch on a couple more things. I guess our coverage this year, the main events that we've covered. Cyclone Wilma was certainly a significant one for us, as I mentioned before. It was great having emails from people at 2 a.m. telling us what's happening on their property. And we were also like a counselling service. There was one lady who sent me quite an upset email at about 2:30 in the morning to tell her that there was a problem with the Met Service site, that it had crashed, which is, we crash as well when there's a big storm and the traffic is just immense that comes into us. And she said, I don't know what's happening with the rain. I've got water flowing through my house right now. I'm literally standing up to my ankles. And my daughter's just given birth to a baby 3 days ago, and she's with me, and it was all a bit of stress, and she found it a huge amount of comfort to be able to email us in an emergency like that, and for us to go back within minutes and say to her, you're sorry to hear what you're going through, but there is good news. We can tell you that the rains are going to ease in the next hour. And she was just over the moon. She didn't care if it even got worse. She said, I'm just so glad to hear the rain stopping. The February earthquake, we didn't have such a big response to that one as we had for other things that we've been involved in. And that was our sort of decision to not really cover it. We didn't really want to jump into it too much. It's not really our territory. We covered the one last year clearly because I was in it, but we tried to distance ourselves from the earthquakes a bit more. We've got a great relationship with GeoNet, and we're working with them to build a section on our website so that the public can also see what's just happened earthquake-wise as well, and that just relieves a little bit of pressure off their website during big moments. The Albany tornado, clearly a big one, as I mentioned before, and the August snowstorm, that was by far our highest rating story this year. We had 100,000 people just in 2 days reading that story. It dominated the news, it dominated our conversations, and I've kept the screenshot of the Auckland weather forecast that we had where we used a snow symbol. I don't think I'll probably ever use that again in my lifetime, maybe in another 30 years, but we'll soon see. And also it was a bit of a kick because we just got on board with civil defence then, and sending Clive the emails about snow possible on the Bombay Hills, and this could be an issue for motorists. And I'm thinking, as I'm writing these, I'm thinking, are they going to take me seriously? This is a bit of a joke, surely. But no, sure enough, it did snow. Those in Wellington and Christchurch laughed at us, but it was still snow, a little bit. Didn't snow at my house, unfortunately, but it was still exciting. So those were our biggest things this year. Going into summer, what do I think? Well, I just was asked before actually about the cyclone season this year. It's not looking too active at the moment. That's the good news. It's looking pretty quiet. There's certainly a bit of activity around Fiji at the moment. That may change, but we've got this problem with these highs at the moment that are squeezing up between us and the tropics, and what it's doing is it's cutting off our rain, and that's why it's starting to dry out here in Auckland, and even though we've got a bit of rain coming on Thursday, it's not going to be much. And for any of you who are from about Taupo northwards, that dry stuff and the windy stuff is going to be around probably for a few more weeks, maybe right up until Christmas, maybe even New Year. Bit of a downer, isn't it? So the good news is most of the seasons this year have been running a bit late, so that means we'll probably have a late summer, Indian summer, might be having a good March as well, so that's something to look forward to. And the last thing I want to end on is a thank you to Civil Defence, not just for inviting me here to speak today, but also just for the interaction that I do have with you, Clive, and with the Auckland team, and John going down and seeing you in Wellington the other day. That was great. And I'm really keen to have feedback from all of you in here, for those of you who do know about our website, and for those of you who I hope now go to our website, to give us feedback on how we're doing, because we take the public safety side of things as our main core, and we are, that's the reason why we like to push severe weather events that are 10 days out. It's not to cause alarm, it's not to wind up the media, it's to just simply give people a heads up. This service is provided in just about every other Western country in the world, so New Zealand should have it as well. So that's what we're trying to do there, and we think that we have a pretty good balance of getting excited about something that is big and not getting too carried away with it if it's not going to be big. So that's what we've done. So I thank you for your time. I hope I've been interesting, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Would anyone have any questions at all they'd like to put to Philip? And there's an arm going up at the back there.
Yes. Weather for the Chathams. Do you know, is that where you're from? Well, that's amazing. Do you know, we have asked, I don't know how many times we've asked on our Herald videos, Country 99 TV, on the website, and we've never had one person from the Chatham Islands or Stewart Island say, hello, think about us. Well, we're launching National Forecast next month, and there'll be a search box for small towns. So you'll be able to put in, is it Waitangi that you put in for the Chathams? Yeah, you'll be able to put that in there. I'm pretty sure we'll have that. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure we'll have the Chathams in there. And our news service actually covers all of New Zealand, and we frequently mention the Chatham Islands. I said today it would be a place I wouldn't want to be later this week, because it's looking pretty stormy with that. This storm that's south of us at the moment, this is pretty impressive. It's about 1.5 times the width of Australia. This is a huge, huge storm in the Southern Ocean. Luckily, it's southeast of us. It's moving away from us, but it's moving at a snail's pace. That's why we've got these big winds coming in again later this week. So, yeah, absolutely huge storm, but moving away from us. But it'll get you in the Chathams. Any other questions?